Hi, I'm Rick Tillery. This is James Sadwith, the director and filmmaker of Coming Through the Rye. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
You've been on a little bit of a tour for film festivals now for a little while.
Since October, yeah.
How's it going for you so far?
It's been great. Just fantastic. People love the film, and we've had some great venues and good parties.
It's such an iconic novel, and to have a story like this to go with it, what has been the most common reactions that you've seen from a lot of the fans?
People are just touched by the story, because we have, some people who don't know anything about it think that we've adapted The Catcher in the Rye as a film, and that's not the case whatsoever. Instead, it's my personal story about my relationship with the book, The Catcher in the Rye, and my search for J.D. Salinger.
Well, take us through that a little bit, because this is such an interesting idea and concept. What was it like to, at that time, to go through that experience?
Well, it was 1969, and I was at a boarding school, and an elite boarding school, which somehow I got into for all the wrong reasons. And I was a fish out of water. I was interested in theater and dramatics, and it was a school heavily oriented towards athletics. So I wasn't the most popular kid at the school, and I read The Catcher in the Rye and fell in love with the book and with Holden Caulfield. And I thought I was destined to be Holden Caulfield in the movies and in theater. So I adapted the book as a stage play to put on at our school as a senior project. And as we got closer to production, I felt this need, this obligation to go find J.D. Salinger in the mountains of New Hampshire, where he was reported to live. And he was a recluse and didn't really want visitors, and was basically hiding from the public. It took me a year to try to even find out what even area he lived in.
Really?
Yeah.
So in the movie there, in the clips of the movie that are obviously available online, you see part of this trip, and where the character meets the love interest and how they kind of go through a few things in that trip, and they have some ups and they have some downs. Is that kind of all along the same lines of what happened?
No. The real story is that I actually went with a friend from New Jersey, a guy, and he drove up, and I snuck away from school. But that's not as dramatic as coming-of-age story, because it is about a boy trying to find himself, which happened to me. But it just seemed more interesting to tell it as a coming-of-age story with a local town girl. And that part of the story is actually true. There was a town girl that I was, a townie we call them, that I was very close friends with. And so that character that's in the movie is partly based on her, and then the other part is based on my wife.
So in the movie, you have to go through a bunch of things to find him. Mm-hmm. Postmaster and asking around town, and you run into these hurdles. Yeah. Did you run into those in real life? Those
are all real people. Well, inspired by real people that I ran into. But yes, all those people and more. We condensed it because, it's a movie and you got to move the story along. But we searched for him for about 5.5 hours. And everybody who you ran into said, never heard of him, or I think he lives over in the opposite direction than you're headed, or they gave us phony directions. And I just figured we searched long enough, we'd just come upon his house.
And is that what happened?
Yeah, some people started to give directions that sounded a little better. I don't know why. I guess they just felt sorry for us. And they kind of described what his driveway would look like. And we drove past this driveway, and I said, well, that looks Salingerish. And we drove up the driveway, and based on the description that some people had given, that was his house. And there he was.
On that second-story balcony.
Yep.
When you see the movie, it looks kind of ramshackle almost, at least in the movie.
Well, it did in real life. We searched for a long time for that house. I wouldn't say it looked ramshackle, but it's just a nondescript house built in the 50s, 60s. It almost looked like a ski lodge. And that's the way it was. We searched all over. We filmed in Virginia, and you would have thought that would have been easy to find, with a second-story balcony out in the sunlight, near the woods, but not in them, because Holden wanted to be sunny as hell all the time. And that's the way Salinger's house was.
What was it like putting your life experiences down on a paper and then onto cellulose?
Well, it was a long time coming, because it happened 46 years ago. And I had written a series of articles and started actually the same year I found him. I wrote an Interscholastic magazine article, and I wrote things about it here and there. It wasn't difficult. It was interesting actually making the movie, though, and casting it. We ended up with two amazing actors, Alex Wolff, who's sensational, and he looks a lot like me, which was not part of the goal. And we put his headshot and my high school senior picture up on the bulletin board, and people were just doing double takes. And you put his corduroy coat on that I wore in those days, and that I wore to see Salinger, and the scarf, and sometimes when we were shooting, I'd have to, my breath would catch, and I'd say, "Oh my God, I can't believe people are going to say I was just looking for someone to look like me."
Well, in a way, you kind of were. So did you? You wore the red hat and everything.
Oh yeah.
That's very interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about your casting for JD, Mr. Cooper.
Yes, Chris Cooper.
As we've talked about, he kind of plays the perennial grumpy old guy, and he's got it nailed.
Or a grumpy young guy.
Or a grumpy young guy. That's a good
American
point.
Beauty, or he's got a pretty wide range. So he wasn't grumpy in Adaptation. He was just eccentric. In October Sky, he's just a very versatile, wonderful character.
And it's funny, you can tell that you've done a little bit of makeup with him for this part. You styled his hair a little bit differently, but the eyebrows are what really I noticed in all of the clips that I saw. Mm-hmm. What was he like to work with?
He's a doll. This is the second time I worked with him. I had worked with him 23 years earlier in a great film with Marcia Gay Harden, Cloris Leachman, and Brian Dennehy, and Chris Cooper. And we shot it in Austin, Texas, and he and I used to go skeet shooting together, on the weekends, and he was great. And I still had his telephone number from 23 years, and I just thought I'd try it to see if it worked when I was looking for J.D. Salinger. He ended up calling me back.
So was he the first person you thought of when you sat down to talk about casting?
He was at the top of the list. Yeah.
So what's next for you?
Well, first, I want to get a distributor for this film. I want people to see it all across the country. I want my investors to get their money back. And then we'll see. I have a bunch of pet projects that I've developed in the past, and some pet projects I thought that are sort of percolating. But right now, the main focus is get this thing in the theaters, get it on video on demand, get the DVDs out. I think people should see it.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk with us, and thank you for visiting Boulder International Film Festival. We hope you're having a great time here in Boulder. It's an awesome place.
It's amazing. Having a great time.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.